Hi guys, it's Kirsty here from KirstyTV with this week's Google Hangout. We are going to be talking with Robyn. Hi Robyn, thank you so much for being here.
Hi.
Robyn Baker struggled with an eating disorder that developed at about 17 in her teens, and she's here today to share her struggles and survival and how she's been able to move forward from that. So Robyn, can you start by telling us a little bit about what was going on for you before you were 17, before this started to manifest into an eating disorder?
When I was in high school, I went to Orange County High School of the Arts, and it's a very demanding high school. I was basically there from about quarter to 7 every morning until sometimes 6 o'clock at night, and if I was in a show, I would be there till about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I'd come home, I'd have homework, and go back. So it was a very intense high school experience, and
I think especially when we think back to our maturity at 17, everything seems so much bigger and more stressful when you're a teen.
And not to mention, I was also commuting about 45 minutes to an hour to school every day because we lived so far away from the school.
Wow.
So it was just a lot for me at that time. And the pressure to get into a really good BFA program for musical theater out of that school was very, very high, and a lot of people had high expectations of myself, and I felt like if I didn't do it, I'd be letting everyone down. So I had a lot of pressure, and I felt like a lot of it was out of my control, and I think that played a lot into it. My father was also an alcoholic at the time, so my home life was very unpredictable. And so I didn't have a lot of predictability anywhere in my life, so that really set the scene for myself. And I think one therapist put it very well when she said, genetics will load the gun, but your environment will pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. So genetically, I do have an addictive gene in my body because my dad is an alcoholic, but then my environment of everything being so unpredictable and out of control really pulled the trigger.
Wow. And so, yeah, that's a really hard one, isn't it? Because at such a young age, I mean, now with hindsight, you can see that you needed coping skills, that you needed to not have such high expectations and put that kind of pressure on yourself. But at the time, I mean, nobody really teaches us in school how to cope with anxiety or stress or even recognize those feelings.
Right. And I feel like it's gotten way more intense lately, especially now. I talked to some high school girls, and just how much pressure they're under now to perform seems even more than I was under. Wow. So I can't even imagine how much more difficult it must be now to be in high school. But yeah, there is no program that really teaches you, or no class that teaches you how to deal with your day-to-day stressors of life, and it's kind of sad. There really should be something like that.
Yeah. So what started, how did the eating disorder begin?
I just started because, you know, like almost every teenage girl and every female, if something's wrong, they aren't happy with themselves. Oh, you know, everyone always feels better about themselves when they lose weight. So I figured I didn't have any weight to lose. I was at a healthy weight and height for my age. But I figured if I lost weight, I would feel better about myself, and I'd feel like I had something going for me because I just felt like everything else was so unpredictable. So I didn't consciously really diet. I just cut back on what I was eating as far as amounts, and it just got a little bit more
innocent.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, most eating disorders do start off as a diet because of one reason or another, and they just get out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I was very, very skinny as a young teen. I've put on a lot of weight as I got older, but I'm very happy. I was called anorexic at school, and surfboard and ironing board because I was flat-chested. Well, now I've got double D's, so something happened. But yeah, not until I was about 21, so I was a very slow developer. But I was, people thought I had an eating disorder because I was so skinny and stick thin. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is that I remember recently I was reading through some old journals, and I'd gone on a diet at 13 or 14, even with people saying that about me, because it was the thing that you were supposed to do. As you say, it's kind of like diets in the media, it's everybody's doing it, and again, it wasn't something that I thought about doing in terms of having an eating disorder. It was just, oh, I've got to cut my calories, and that's what everyone's doing. It's really quite sad that people who are so tiny, and as teenagers we haven't even fully developed into our womanly bodies, and we're already thinking we should be slimmer. When I look back now and think that was the slimmest I ever was.
Yeah, it's sad because almost every commercial for weight loss you see, I felt horrible about myself, but as soon as I lost weight, I felt great. Everything was fine. You know, my husband stayed with me. My job turned around. It makes it feel like if you just lose weight, then everything magically gets better. And in all areas of your life, no matter what it be. So it gives people, I think, a false sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
To some extent, and for some people medically it is necessary, and once their health is better, their life does get better. But for those that it's just for aesthetic reasons, you want to lose body fat because you just don't feel like you look good in your bikini. Yeah. But then you think that if you do that, then you're magically going to land your dream job is completely unrealistic. But I think that the media does tend to influence that thinking.
Yeah, and I think the sad part is that it starts off so innocently and with that thought process, but the reality is, like any addiction, it escalates pretty quickly, and then you end up in a situation where you have more problems and less coping skills, and you're so deep into it that life crumbles. So how did it escalate for you? So it started with just being a diet, I'll cut my calories, and what was going on a daily basis that it started to escalate?
On a daily basis, I was just eating so much less each. I don't know how often I just cut back. I just, as an anorexic, you get to a point where hunger doesn't even register anymore to a point, and it's really scary once it gets to that point. But I was still eating, but extremely small amounts, and my body weight kept dropping, and it was interesting because my mom thought I had some terrible disease. She thought I might have cancer because I was losing so much weight. So she took me to a bunch of there are family practitioners, and they just kept saying, she's just thin. There's no problem with her. She has no issues. It's fine. You know, she's just tiny. She's just thin.
And how were you hiding it? Because wasn't she seeing what meals you were eating?
I was gone almost all day because of my my school. Mm-hmm. I would eat breakfast in the car or at school sometimes because it was so early when we leave home. Yeah. And I eat lunch obviously at school, and then for dinner, a lot of the times I would eat at school, especially if I had rehearsals. We would eat in between classes and rehearsal. So it was very easy for me to control what I was eating because I wasn't at home at all. And the times I was at home, my family was very health conscious as it was. So we ate very basic and clean foods. That there was nothing too scary about it and nothing too like fattening. So it was easy.
And so what was going on in terms of your thinking at that point, if you remember? From the day one when it started just being this diet, was it progressively, were you cutting more and more, and was it every day? Was it almost like a competition with yourself that you started to enjoy seeing the weight loss and you wanted to do it more, or was it more obsessive?
It was definitely more obsessive. Once I would get to a certain weight that I thought would be a good weight, it wasn't good enough anymore, and it was, okay, well, I got to this amount, let's see if I can drop another couple pounds. Wow. I still don't feel good about myself. My life still isn't fixed. So maybe if I lost about 5 more pounds, then everything would be better.
Do you look back now and think there's anything you could have done to catch that thought process earlier, or is it almost something you had to go through to recognize?
I think if someone would have pulled me aside earlier and really saw what was going on, then I think there would have been some turnaround somewhere. It basically took me figuring out what was going on in myself, and I can't remember how I figured it out, that this isn't good or I'm scared, And one night when my mom was driving me home from a show I was in, I sat in the car with her when we pulled into our house, and I just broke down and said, I'm not eating, Mom, and that's why I'm losing so much weight, and I'm just really upset, and I don't know what to do. And I think she was scared, but then also relieved to know that, you know, she wasn't going crazy thinking that I was losing too much weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting because, you know, when all of the research I've been doing for this interview, they do classify an eating disorder as a psychiatric illness and a mental illness because it really takes over the brain and overrides a lot of our normal decision-making processes, and you think completely different once it takes hold.
Right. It's definitely a mental illness, absolutely. A lot of people refer to their eating disorder as ED, and it's you do hear another voice in your head telling you not to eat something, that you're horrible if you do eat something, that you're worthless if you do eat more than you've allowed yourself to. So it takes hold of you and controls every aspect of your life.
Well, and this is the interesting thing because at one point you got down to about 96 pounds, and which is in Australian, I think about 43 kilos, which is really a child's weight.
Right.
And I saw some photos of you, and your veins were showing, and you were just like bony. And so when you're in the disease, you didn't look at yourself and see that, though.
No, you know, you would. A lot of times, for most people in their eating disorder, when you get down to a certain weight, especially anorexia, in anorexia, you'll get down to a certain weight and you'll still see fat in certain places and think, okay, I'm still not thin enough, or, you know, there's this area that I could still lose weight in. Another thing is if people do see you when you're really thin, unfortunately, some people, even at that low weight, would come up to me and say, oh, you look great. And I would hear that and think, okay, I'm still fat, or I'm still normal size, so I need to lose more weight.
Okay.
So anything
because people have, like, I think it's called body dysmorphia, where they look in the mirror and don't see what everyone else is seeing is a bag of bones, and they're not able to see that. So it's quite, as you say, it's that mental illness. It's quite crazy that you can get so scarily low that, I mean, you ended up in hospital.
I did. And I remember the week before I was admitted, I knew I was going in, but they had to wait to admit me. And I basically lived on I was obviously still living at home because I was a teenager. But I stayed home from school and just lived on the couch watching TV and barely knowing if it was day or night, and barely eating like anything at all at that point. And it was that was probably the lowest point in my entire life at that point.
Yeah, it must be really hard for people around you too to see you literally killing yourself, and as you say, getting so delirious that you don't know if it's day or night anymore, that you're not even functioning.
Right. My mom, I put her through the ringer through the whole thing. My dad also was, he reached out to all different resources that they could, and I mean, I couldn't imagine. Now I'm a mom now, and I couldn't imagine my child going through something like that and feeling completely helpless and not knowing where to turn and who to go to, and just seeing them just laying on the couch and not have any energy, not be able to do anything because they're doing something self-inflicting.
Yeah, well, that's the hard part. People would be like, well, just eat something, but that's not how it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. That was, a lot of times people think, oh, the answer is just if you just eat, then you're fine. So here, have a hamburger. And it doesn't work that way because it is a mental illness. It's not, the eating is a symptom of it, and it's a behavior of what's really going on in your life and what's going on in your head. Mm-hmm. And it's changing the behavior doesn't change the thinking and the mental process that's going on with you. So it really takes that to change first for your eating habits to change and get back to normal.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of if there's a teenager out there now, or I mean, this happens for adults, happens for men as well as women and girls, What are some of the, if we were to look in and see you at the height of this disease, what were you doing on a daily basis? What were the rituals? What were the unhealthy behaviors?
The major one I would say is I would avoid social contact with people, especially around food. I was very rigid about what I ate. I counted every single calorie, even the gum I ate. I made sure those were factored in. So people that are just extremely rigid in what they eat, what they don't eat, how many calories you're taking in. I had a specific time that I would allow myself to eat. It couldn't be before. It couldn't be too late after that. Everything was just very rigid.
So is
And
it literally consuming like every thought of every minute of it? Is it like becoming a full-time job?
yeah, I couldn't concentrate on school. My grades slipped. Everything revolved around food. And I was just constantly thinking of it. What was I going to eat next? What time? And it was like a countdown to the next time. I
How
had no time or energy for anything else.
How quickly did that happen from the day when you started the dieting and then it slowly was escalating? How long between that till it got a full hold on you and was becoming like you couldn't concentrate on school and this was all you did all day?
I would say about 4 months,
Wow.
5 months. I like I said, I was a normal weight. I didn't have like any weight to lose, and
Do you
I
think
lost
there's,
weight.
is there a window there when people could really recognize that in those first few months?
I don't think so. It's such a the thing with eating disorders. It's so sneaky, as my therapist likes to say. They're very sneaky, and because society admires weight loss so much and glamorizes it so much, it's looked on as acceptable. Even if females are a normal weight, and you say you want to lose a few pounds, it's not a big deal. Or they see that you're eating, more healthy. It's looked on as a positive thing rather than, why are you doing this? You're a fine weight. There's no reason for you. You have no health issues.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for eating disorders to sneak in and slowly get out of control because it is widely, I think, acceptable.
So being on that couch, why was that a low moment for you?
I couldn't do anything for myself. I was completely consumed in my obsessiveness about my food. I was surrounded by food. I'm in my parents' house. Their kitchen is fully stocked. I could have easily gotten up out of the couch, poured myself, a bowl of cereal and eaten that and felt a million times better. But my eating disorder was so strong a hold on me, and I was starving at that point. I really, really felt my hunger pangs like really bad, and I was so engulfed in my eating disorder that I couldn't let myself get up and go get some food. It's just mind blowing that I'm hungry, and here I'm so hungry that my stomach feels like it's eating itself, that I can't get up and go get some food for myself, and there's plenty in the kitchen. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that is the crazy part. I mean, I had here some notes that you were talking about. You didn't have a period for 7 years. You developed osteoporosis. You suffered a stress fracture in your hip from marathon training and weak bone density, which is an injury only common in the elderly. It's insanity what this can, the extreme, like you said, felt like you were eating yourself, your stomach, because you were starving. But not only that, the long-term repercussions of what this damage can do to people, and I mean, there's for bulimics, throwing up, it can be extreme damage to the esophagus and the colon and all kinds of things. Is there any regret? Do you feel like, are you concerned about the long-term effects this has had on your body?
I was, and I was always really, really scared, especially not having my period for such a long time, of being able to have kids. That was one of the biggest motivators for me to finally get better. And I was just so scared that I would never be able to have kids because I've always wanted to be a mom. And lo and behold, the body's an amazing thing and can come back. I was very fortunate, though, to have, doctors completely push me when I didn't want to be pushed and keep me on track. I do know some girls that, they did do not nearly as crazy as I did their behaviors and not lose nearly as much weight, but they damaged their fertility. Their health has been even much more detrimental than mine. I've been extremely fortunate. So it differs from person to person if it does have really long-standing effects on you.
Well, I think you're rolling the dice, and you just never know if you're going to be one of the ones that, as you say, damages your fertility or destroys your esophagus or ends up with osteoporosis or something. You're now how old?
I'm 33 now.
Yeah.
And
so such a young age to be having bone density issues.
Yeah. And I did do a medication where I had to give myself injections every day for 2 years to get my bone density back up.
Wow. So that's at the time, laying there on that couch, you weren't thinking about the future and all of the damage that you were doing. You're so consumed in the moment of the disease.
Right. It never occurred to me that, at 18 you really don't think about having kids, and it really the scare of possibly gaining weight and possibly increasing whatever size clothing you're wearing is so overwhelming and so has such a hold on you that your health is not as important. So the ability, the uncomfortableness and the anxiety and the fear that you get from eating more outweighs the logical sense of, I'm destroying my body, I might, forever damage my body. That doesn't matter because that's more easy to handle than gaining any weight.
Yeah, which it doesn't make sense because you're saying the idea of gaining a clothes size, so you're isolated, you're alone, you have no friends anymore, your life's gone, and you could put on some weight and have friends, but the idea of being out in the world a little bit heavier.
Right.
So do you think that it ties into self-esteem and self-confidence as well, that do we have to learn to love ourselves? So would that have helped earlier on?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it stems from who you surround yourself with, and I don't like giving, saying my example of my mom, but unfortunately my mom just didn't have the best self-esteem, and seeing how hard my mom was on herself, on her looks, on her weight, on just appearance issues, made me think, okay, I think my mom's beautiful, but she doesn't think she's beautiful. So if I think I'm beautiful, I'm probably not beautiful either, or I'm fat. If my mom's fat, I must be fat too.
Wow. I think that's really profound because, you don't realize even just the way you talk about yourself has an impact on your daughter or as a role model. And I was talking to somebody the other day about how there was a beauty clinic where they were doing Botox, and women were showing up with their 3- and 4-year-old kids. And I was just thinking, like, these children are growing up thinking this is as normal as going to the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
It's insanity.
Yeah.
And what does that say about, so you have to inject yourself to be beautiful, you have to change how you look to be accepted?
Yeah, there's so many things, especially I live in Orange County, California.
The heart and soul of Barbie.
It's everywhere here. There's a Botox clinic on every street corner. You can get Botox from your family doctor. It's really unnerving. And it's just that it does send a message that, this is what I need to do to feel good about myself. Well, yes, yeah, but how long does that last for? Yeah. I think the value of feeling good about yourself really has been lost on, when people donate their time or do charitable works. That redeeming feeling is not nearly as pushed and not nearly as prevalent as fixing the way you look to make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. So at 17, you're hospitalized, you went into treatment, you did okay for a while, and then there was sort of like an 8-year period where it took hold again, and then your family intervened. And you kind of switched to it being a very exercise-driven anorexia, right?
Mm-hmm. When I got out of treatment the first time, I still needed to gain weight. So I decided, okay, well, if I'm going to gain weight, I should gain muscle because at least I'll look better, too. I'll still look good because I'm gaining muscle, and I'll meet my doctor's criteria of what number weight she wants me to be at, which is still eating disorder thinking. So I began working out with a family friend that taught me how to do weight training. And little by little, I got more into it and more into indoor cycling. And it took over as far as, okay, I really, I need to exercise every day. If I don't exercise, I can't eat X amount of calories. So I have to go exercise so I can eat. And I know so many women and men that allow themselves, again, allowing in quotes, allow themselves to eat certain foods because they exercise that day. And that is disordered thinking in itself, thinking that you are not allowed to enjoy a certain food because you didn't go do your spin class today.
And that's, again, where it can escalate, and it got to the point where you were purging your calories the same way, so you're over-exercising them in the same way a bulimic would purge their calories. So you're still ending up with the end result being that your body's starving because you have no fuel left in it because you've gotten rid of it all by working out extreme hours. How many hours were you doing at that point a day?
3 hours a day. I was in the gym for 3 hours a day, and I didn't miss, I can't remember how many years I told you, but it was a very long time. I missed, it was at least 5 years that I didn't take a day off.
Wow.
I missed family vacations.
Control's taken over.
Yeah, it was, if I didn't go to the gym, it was the same thing as if I ate and gained weight. It was the anxiety of missing going to the gym or missing a workout was so overwhelming that it clouded my logical thinking. I wouldn't go on vacations. I wouldn't schedule anything at my normal workout time because that was what I had to do. I couldn't function if I didn't go do that first.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, that this isn't something like you were loving getting up every day and going and working out and enjoying it. This had become such an anxiety for you that it was almost torture. And especially when you can't give yourself a day off, and then it takes over your life. You can't catch up with friends or family or see people at certain times because you've got to be working out. And I presume you were working at this point. So yeah, 3 hours of exercise is hard to fit in.
Well, it was easy because I was a personal trainer at that point. And so that was one of the things that did happen from becoming so obsessed with exercise, was that I changed my major from musical theater to kinesiology and became a personal trainer while I was getting my degree, mainly because my eating disorder decided that's what I should do. That, hey, I can sneak in getting more hours of exercise and make it be okay because it's my profession. It's what I do. I'm at the gym, so I'm going to work out more. So it was easy to over-exercise because I was already there and that was my job.
Which is, again, just a warning for people to have those little alarm bell moments that, going off course with the dream that you had because your eating disorder's talking you into something else that's now taking away your dream and putting you in a situation where you're going to engage in more unhealthy behavior.
Right.
So in terms of the turning point, when do you feel was the true turning point that you were ready to start on the road to recovery?
It was funny you say that I was ready. It was sad. My parents really had to give me an ultimatum. They were paying for me to see my therapist at that point. They were paying for me to go to a dietitian. I couldn't afford it, and my insurance was barely paying for any of it. So they would give me an allowance every month to go see my doctors. I knew I had, I definitely needed help, and if I couldn't see them, I knew there was no way I would be able to stay. I was basically just like holding my neck up above water at that point. But if I wasn't seeing them, then there was no way I would be able to even stay a little above water. I'd probably be fully engulfed back into my eating disorder and be really at risk again.
It's great that you had a little bit of awareness around that, though.
Yeah, I think the first stint of treatment, I think, gave me a little bit more of being aware of when things got too out of hand. But they gave me an ultimatum because my health was starting to get worse and worse again, and they basically had an intervention with me when I went to one of my dietitian's appointments and said, we found this treatment center. This is where you're going to go. If you don't go, we're not going to help you. We don't want to have anything to do with you. We don't want to speak with you. So that was
tough love.
Huh?
Tough love.
Oh yeah. It was scary. I was very angry at them. Very angry. And I laugh about it now because I see how stupid I was. And so I was like, fine, I guess I have to go. I was really upset with them and didn't want to.
What were you the most terrified about?
I was scared about losing my job. I was working as a Pilates instructor in a studio, which I loved. I prided myself on my work, and I still do, but I put so much of my self-worth into what I produce and my work that losing that I felt like was I'd be losing a part of who I was, and it was just not me to quit something. But I was able to pull the owner of the studio aside and let her know what was going on, and she was so extremely supportive. I'm certain she had an idea of what was going on at that point because I was too thin, and she was extremely supportive. Said I had a space, place in the studio when I came back if I was interested. So it was okay in the end, but I think the biggest thing for me was I didn't want to lose my job. I didn't want to leave the life I had because I had worked so hard to get where I was.
Mm-hmm. And so what happened? Where were you sent, or where did you go?
I went to Center for Change in Utah, and I don't know because I'm biased probably because I've only been to 2 treatment centers, but they are wonderful. Their program was, I have nothing but amazing things to say about them. Their entire staff was phenomenal. Everything was just such a well organized, and they were extremely strict. The rules were really nuts at some point, and but if it wasn't for that, there's no way I would have made a full recovery. And I always liked it when we would complain about how many rules and restrictions there were on us there. They would always remind us, well, think of how many rules and restrictions you put on yourself when you're not here. Mm. So I'm like, okay.
What were some of the rules?
Like when you're there, before you get to a certain level of like proving yourself, all the bathroom doors are locked, so you can't just go to the bathroom whenever you want. They have to unlock them for you. When you first get there, they make sure that the bathroom door is cracked open when you're going to the bathroom, or they'll stand in the bathroom with you and with their backs turned to you, even if, like, I know history of purging. So they would still do that with you. You had no privacy. The food rules of you could only have 2 glasses of water with your food. You had to eat a certain speed. If it was too fast, they noted it and would tell your doctor, or would make you get in trouble for it. Everything was very, very
wow.
Very much wrong.
Obviously necessary for somebody to heal from this eating disorder, because they're not doing this because you're eating huge portions. They're doing this because people are starving themselves.
Right.
So how hard is it to gain weight?
Because I did the majority of my weight gain in the treatment center there, it was not as difficult as I thought it would be. And I remember the first days I was there, the hardest part was not exercising. Because at that point that was when I was really obsessed with exercise and getting that in every day.
Well, and there's so many different types of eating disorders, and yours was heavily, a big part of your eating disorder was this compulsive exercising. So that was almost harder for you, whereas for some others they were purging, and to get you to stop vomiting is another side of things. So, and in terms of how do you even begin to gain weight if somebody's in this situation? What are those first 2 or 3 steps that you or the facility encourages you to start taking that are really important to be able to make small steps into gaining weight?
It really, just having a dietitian and having someone there to monitor everything you do. And so doing it by yourself, if you're that engulfed in an eating disorder, is really next to impossible. If someone is to the point where their health is extremely deteriorating and different organs are starting to be affected, then doing it by yourself is really almost out of the question. You do need someone there to sit with you while you eat, to make sure you finish everything, because there is, I don't know anyone that has successfully come back from such a low weight that's their health has really, really declined and been able to gain weight. I do know girls that felt like they were on the brink of getting, becoming extremely engulfed in the eating disorder to the point of organ shutting down and having major health issues, that were able to turn it around. Just something set off in them that they decided that the anxiety they felt from eating and gaining weight wasn't as a big a deal as that their future health was more important. Wow. And it's different for everyone, I think. I don't think there's one magic thing I could say would work for everybody. But I think it does come down to learning how to deal with the anxiety and deal with the feeling of being so uncomfortable that you want to just crawl out of your skin because you are eating more than you're used to. Learning how to deal with that and just let it pass and let it go every single time you sit down to eat is the first step.
And does it get easier?
It does. It definitely got easier when I was in treatment. The first time I sat down to eat what they served me, I had so much anxiety. And the more, like anything, the more and more you do it, the easier it gets, because you're repeating a behavior and it's familiar. And from the first time you did it, nothing happened. You didn't die. The world didn't come to an end. Everything's okay. No one hates you. Everyone still loves you. You're not going to lose your life because you ate an extra X amount of calories or a cookie or something. So everything's okay. Nothing happened. So if you can keep that in the back of your head while you repeat, the behavior of eating more and eating foods that you really like, then it slowly becomes easier.
And now, are you able to eat a meal without thinking about it, or is it still such a big part of your thought process?
There's sometimes when it does creep back in. I can admit that, but for the most part, if I feel like eating something, I'm going to eat it. I don't say, oh, I can't have that because that's bad, or I don't label foods as good or bad. Food's food. There's no good or bad to them. I really try to what they taught us at Center for Change is intuitive eating. So I try to check in to see, okay, do I want something warm? Do I want something cold? Do I want something crunchy? Do I want something soft? So kind of going through all my checklist of what I really want to eat, and then figuring out, okay, well, what's in my cabinet that kind of fits that, and then eating that, and I'm like, oh, I'm always satisfied with what I'm eating. If I'm out, same thing. I'll just ask myself all these questions. Okay, what do I really feel like eating? Sushi doesn't sound too good, but that burrito sounds great because I feel like something spicy and I want Mexican food, so I'll go get a Mexican food. So it's learning. That took a long time to learn, but they really followed that those I guess rules and I guess idea of thinking of really tapping into what you feel like eating.
I love that, intuitive eating. And I think that for everyone, I mean, there's the other end of the spectrum of obesity where people are just shoveling in food that isn't really food, processed food with no taste and cardboard, and then wondering why they're still not satisfied, and then they feel depressed and unhappy. So I really ascribe to that idea of intuitive eating and thinking, checking in with your body and being present when you eat. So you don't count calories anymore?
No.
Awesome. High five.
It's really frustrating to count calories. I don't know how people do it. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of work, and I don't have time to do it. And I don't want to do it because it's overwhelming. And I'm sure most people agree with me.
Yeah, but I also think that, as you say, like, we can start very innocently with something like that, thinking, oh, this is good to monitor, you know, maybe I've got a few extra pounds. And these are the things that can escalate into compulsive and obsessive characteristics and be the beginning of an eating disorder. So if somebody was a few pounds overweight and thinking about going on a diet, what would you be suggesting they do instead?
First, check with your doctor, see if it's medically necessary. And if the doctor says no, then but by textbook means, you know, you're overweight for one reason or another by your BMI, which I don't think is very viable for anyone. You know, tell your doctor how you're feeling about it. You know, I'll always check with your doctor, and check in with yourself. Are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you doing it because you lost your boyfriend, or because you are going through a hard time with school, or because something is out of control in your life and you think if you did this you'd feel better? If that's the case, you're probably not losing weight for the right reason. But, you know, you can give the example of the girl that's going to become, you know, be in a wedding. She's going to be a bride, and she has no health issues, no health concerns, but she wants to, you know, she wants to lose a couple pounds because she wants to look great in her wedding dress for one reason or other. And it's purely based on, I want to look good in my wedding dress. And that's a little bit more of an innocent reason, I think, to lose weight. But if it's because you think you're going to fix something in your life that's completely not related to your weight, then that's a thing to kind of double check with yourself.
And I think also what you just touched on there is that idea of control. So sometimes we don't realize that maybe something else has triggered it, that we're feeling unattractive or don't have a partner, or partner's left, or we want a better job. And we think by doing this, it's going to make us feel really great. And we can then control things. Can you speak a little bit to the control aspect of eating disorders?
Right. Well, like you said, the eating disorders, it is a control. It's all about control. I still struggle with that, and I know that's what can be a big trigger for me. When things are out of control and you feel like there's nothing else that you have control over. For many people that start an eating disorder, the one thing they can control is their food, and you know, once that gets so obsessive and so rigid and people start losing weight from that, that becomes an issue. Yeah.
Well, I know you had a baby, and you were talking to me a little bit about how that can trigger things and bring things up. I mean, obviously, for you, being an anorexic, it's a worse nightmare putting on all that baby weight, but a natural part of the process. So how did you cope with that, your body changing so much?
It's really funny because I think all my doctors and everyone was like, while I was pregnant, they were like really, really making sure everything's okay. I felt the most amazing I've ever felt in my life putting on weight when I was pregnant. I had no problems with it whatsoever. I think because I knew the purpose of it, that I was making another human being in my body, that I needed to eat, you know, I needed to eat more, I needed to eat more frequently. It made it so easy for me to do that. And I had no problems with it, and I felt great being pregnant. I had no issues. It was a very easy pregnancy, so I was very lucky. I think the more difficult part was after I had the child, and you know how it's just crazy how the media, just like, especially with like, you know, Kate having her baby. Oh, look at, she's back to her normal size in 2 days. Or the media just obsesses over new moms in the spotlight and how fast they can get back to their preterm baby weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I did put a lot of pressure on myself, thinking, okay, the baby's out, now it's time to, you know, buckle down and make sure that I get back to a certain weight. But at the same time, I'm still nursing my son to this day, and I do need to make sure that I take care of myself, that I treat myself well, or my milk supply will go south. Mm-hmm. So I think having that also keeps me in check as well. But I think that there's so much pressure, more so for females after they have the child, to lose the weight as fast as they can, and your body goes through craziness after having a child. So it's pretty sad how much attention is spent on that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a time when you should be enjoying the first few months of your child, not thinking about, you know, I have to get back to this perfect weight. Do you, I mean, I would just avoid media in general and not buy the gossip magazines and not watch the crap.
Right. It's hard being home all the time with a new baby, but
But you have to watch some KirstyTV.
Right. I think the way I coped with it more so was, you know, I read through my old journals a lot of the time of when I was in treatment, and reminded myself of what was really important to myself. I also just knowing that I needed to be 100% available to this little tiny human being, and that I'm no longer the most important thing in the world, also really keeps me on track, because if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't take care of someone else.
Yeah. When you have triggers come up, what are they? What are the sort of things that will happen, or the way that you think that you'll notice, okay, that's the eating disorder talking?
It's still control. So like after my son was born, one of the biggest things, I know any new mom can attest to this, that you have no idea what's going to happen in a day. You don't know if your son or your daughter is going to be okay with eating that day. They're not going to be okay with eating, if they're going to take their naps, if they're going to puke on you when you're out in the mall. Everything is completely just up, and you don't know what's going to happen. So learning how to deal with everything just being completely out of your control was the most difficult thing for me. And the way I learned to cope with it, and I totally stole it from my childbirthing classes, was just breathing and yoga, just doing yoga breathing, taking a deep breath in and breathing out through my nose, letting it come out slowly. I think a yoga teacher told me once that if you have total anxiety or upset about something, you can't literally tell yourself to calm down in your head. It won't happen. You physiologically have to change something about yourself. And once, when you're nervous or have anxiety, we all breathe very shallowly. Mm-hmm. So if you slow down and take a very deep breath, you can physiologically calm yourself down, and that in turn will calm down the chatter in your head as well.
I love that. Yeah, there's another one where if you look down and you're thinking depressed, miserable thoughts, and then you look up and try and think them, but you smile, you actually can't continue to think depressive thoughts. So when you change the physiology, look up and smile, it shifts everything. That and breathing. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're really important. And it's so, when you started at 17 and you didn't have any coping skills and you had all of this stress and anxiety, they're the tools you didn't have back then. So I think that's the other important thing for anybody, no matter how young you are, is if you start to notice yourself feeling out of control or having anxiety, rather than looking at either starting an eating disorder or numbing or addiction in some way, is to recognize in yourself, what am I missing that I need in terms of tools and resources to be able to cope with this.
Right, and like I said earlier, it's unfortunate that there isn't any program out there that teaches any kid, men or female, how to cope with stress.
Yeah. And get present to their feelings instead of trying to not feel them.
Right, and I think there's, like I said, there's so much more pressure on young people today than there was back when I was a kid. That there's something there needs to definitely be something out there for them in the schools. The program I work with, Rewrite Beautiful, we go into schools and we teach girls that beauty is not based on their appearance; it's being creative, kind, and strong. And it's one step, I think, in many steps that need to occur for the younger generation to be able to avoid dealing with an eating disorder, any type of self-harm condition, be it suicide, anything.
Cutting's become a big one now too.
Right.
So what would you say to your 17-year-old self if you could talk to her 2 days before she started that diet? What would you tell her?
Geez. The one thing that I still tell myself to this day, which usually gets me out of my negative thinking, is you are fine, you are beautiful, and you are great exactly as you are, and you are enough. You do not need to be more than what you are right now. You are completely enough just as you are. There is nothing more you need to do to prove yourself. You are good just as you are. And to this day, it's hard for me to say that to myself, and I know for most people, it's like I can't say that to myself. But self-acceptance for where you're at, and knowing that you don't have to prove yourself to anybody else to be accepted and to be loved is hard. And I think it's hard for any teenager to know that.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're going to put up information for Rewrite Beautiful on our blog, and people can subscribe on YouTube, click the subscribe button, Facebook us and tweet us. So if you're out there and you're struggling, and I think all of us on some level have been at some point in our life on the spectrum with an eating disorder or engaging in unhealthy over-exercising or food patterns. And so I think that this is a really great interview to kind of recognize that maybe you might be at the beginning where it seems very innocent, but it can quickly escalate. So it's a great warning to pick up those signs and be aware. And if you are in the clutches of the eating disorder, hopefully this has also given you some ideas on how you can get help and some tools and strategies for moving forward. So I look forward to seeing you next time on KirstyTV. Thanks for being here.